The traffic stop. The sun began its descent, casting a warm glow over the suburban streets of Maplewood. Officer Jake Harmon parked his cruiser outside Maplewood High, ready for the routine patrol he had come to know by heart. As he surveyed the parking lot, he spotted two young girls, identical twins, wearing school uniforms that bore the school's emblem. Their dark skin stood out against the backdrop of predominantly white students, catching Jake's attention in a way that made his instincts flare. "Something feels off," he muttered under his breath, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. In his mind, the girls didn't fit the mold of Maplewood students. He had never seen them before, and that raised a flag. Fueled by the biases he had allowed to shape his view of the world, he flipped on his lights and stepped out of the cruiser, a determined look on his face. The twins, Alexis and Jordan Carter, exchanged glances as they turned toward him, their expressions a mix of confusion and apprehension. Jake's heart raced with a blend of adrenaline and misplaced conviction. They didn't look like they belonged in this neighborhood, in this prestigious school. "ID, please," he barked, stepping closer. The twins remained calm, their hands sliding into their backpacks to retrieve their identification. "Officer, we're students here," Alexis explained, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "I'm Alexis, and this is my sister Jordan. We just forgot our IDs." Jake's skepticism deepened. "You forgot, or you're lying." The words tumbled out before he could rein them in. It was a knee-jerk reaction, one that felt all too familiar. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were troublemakers, even though they were merely standing in front of him. Jordan, her voice trembling but determined, replied, "We can have our father verify it. He's on the board here." "Get in the car," Jake commanded, pointing toward the back seat of his cruiser. The twins hesitated, exchanging worried glances. "Now," he barked, his tone sharp enough to make their resolve waver. The twins complied, sliding into the back seat of the cruiser, their movements slow and deliberate. Jake slammed the door behind them, muttering under his breath about how this was how things always went. He had grown tired of seeing young people like them wandering the streets, as if they owned the place. As he drove away from the school, his knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. The girls sat silently in the back, their posture rigid, their faces turned away. Jake couldn't understand their quietness. He expected tears or protests, but instead, they seemed unflappable, as if they were holding onto a secret that he couldn't fathom. The tension in the car thickened, and Jake's mind raced. He thought about his badge and how he was supposed to keep the peace, but in that moment, his biases clouded his judgment. He glanced in the rearview mirror, feeling a spark of irritation at their calm demeanor. "You're awful quiet back there," he sneered, trying to break the uncomfortable silence. But neither girl responded. They sat there, their eyes fixed straight ahead, as if their silence was a statement of its own. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, interrupting his spiraling thoughts. "Unit 12, we've got a report of a house fire on Maple Street. Respond immediately." Jake sighed in frustration, glancing at the girls once more. "Great," he grumbled, pulling over to the side of the road. "Just what I need right now." He reached for his phone, his instincts kicking in. As he scrolled through his contacts, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A black van had been following him for the last few blocks, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. Suspicion clawed at him as he kept his gaze on the vehicle. "Stay put," he ordered the twins, stepping out of the car. His heartbeat quickened, not just from the tension of the traffic stop, but from the sudden shift in the atmosphere. He glanced back at the van, and as he did, he saw two men get out, moving toward him with purpose. "Who are you?" Jake barked, his hand instinctively resting on his weapon. "Just concerned citizens," one of the men replied, his tone calm but firm. "We saw you pull those girls over, and we're not okay with it." "Mind your business," Jake shot back, irritation flaring in his chest. "They're not going anywhere until I sort this out." The man stepped closer, his voice low. "You need to let them go." This isn't how we do things here. Do you think I care what you think? Jake retorted, his voice rising. The twins watched the scene unfold with an intensity that only deepened Jake's unease. The second man pulled out a phone, his expression resolute. You might want to think about that. You're about to make a big mistake. Jake's stomach dropped as the realization of the situation hit him. These men were here to protect the twins. He was outnumbered and didn't have the upper hand he thought he did. As the tension mounted, he felt a spark of panic that he struggled to suppress. Enough of this, he shouted, stepping back toward the cruiser. I'm taking them in. On what charges? The first man questioned, his voice steady. You have no reason to detain them, and you know it. Shut your mouth, Jake snapped, frustration boiling over. He turned back to the twins, who now sat with their arms crossed, their expressions unyielding. You don't know who you're messing with. Just as Jake felt his control slipping, his phone rang, cutting through the tense atmosphere like a knife. He fumbled to answer it, his hands shaking. The caller ID read Captain Stanton, he answered, trying to keep his voice steady. Where are you? The captain demanded, his tone sharp. I'm bringing in 2 individuals, Jake stammered, his heart racing. Do you have any idea who those girls are? The captain's voice was unyielding. No, Jake replied, confusion settling in. They're the daughters of District Attorney Thompson. You need to release them immediately and get to his office. Now. Panic surged through Jake as he processed the weight of his mistake. I'm sorry, he managed, the words tumbling out. I didn't know. You'll explain everything to him, the captain ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. Now get moving. Jake hung up the phone, feeling the walls close in around him. He turned to face the twins, their eyes locked onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. I made a mistake, he stuttered, fumbling for the right words. You're free to go. The twins exchanged a look, their silence echoing in the air. They didn't move. They remained seated, poised and defiant, their calmness radiating a strength that made Jake's heart race. Get out, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Finally, they slid out of the cruiser, their movements fluid and graceful. Jake felt the weight of his shame pressing down on him as he watched them walk away. A black van pulled up behind his patrol car, the tinted windows concealing the occupants. As the twins approached, the door opened, revealing a tall man in a sharp suit, exuding authority. Girls, he said, his voice deep and commanding, your father is waiting for you. The twins climbed into the van, and as it drove off, Jake stood there, feeling small and exposed. The men who had confronted him earlier exchanged glances before getting back into their vehicle, leaving him alone on the roadside, the morning sun casting long shadows that felt like a shroud of shame around him. The weight of his actions settled heavily on his shoulders, a reminder of the biases he had allowed to govern his behavior. The twins' quiet dignity in the face of his prejudice haunted him as he headed toward the DA's office, the reality of his mistakes becoming painfully clear. Confrontation and consequences. The drive to District Attorney Samuel Thompson's office was a blur for Officer Jake Harmon. His mind raced with a mixture of dread and disbelief at the chain of events that had unfolded. The reality of detaining the DA's daughters hung heavily over him, a dark cloud threatening to burst at any moment. He parked his cruiser outside the imposing building, the glass facade reflecting the late afternoon sun, which felt unusually bright against the backdrop of his anxiety. As he walked toward the entrance, he could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. The polished marble floors of the lobby echoed under his boots as he made his way to the elevator. He was acutely aware of the stares from the staff and patrons, their glances sharp and critical. It was as if they could see through his uniform and the facade he had maintained, exposing the turmoil roiling inside him. When he reached the office of D.A. Thompson, the secretary looked up from her computer with a raised eyebrow. "Officer Harmon," she said, her tone cool and skeptical. "He's expecting you." Jake stepped into the plush office, the decor exuding power and authority. D.A. Thompson sat behind his imposing desk, his expression unreadable. The walls were lined with framed photographs of him with various political figures and community leaders, a testament to his influence. Jake felt small in the vastness of the room, acutely aware of his own missteps. "Sit down, Officer Harmon," Thompson said, gesturing to a chair opposite him. Jake took a seat, trying to steady his breathing. "I understand you had an encounter with my daughters today." "Yes, sir." Jake started, but Thompson held up a hand, cutting him off. "Let's not dance around the issue. You detained them without cause. You made assumptions based solely on their appearance." Thompson's voice was calm but firm, carrying an edge that sent shivers down Jake's spine. "Do you understand the implications of that?" Jake nodded, his throat dry. "I do, sir. I made a mistake. I didn't know they were your daughters." "That's not an excuse," Thompson replied, his tone sharpening. "You acted on your biases, officer. You chose to see them as criminals rather than students, and now you have to face the consequences of that decision." The gravity of Thompson's words settled over Jake like a heavy blanket. "I'm sorry," he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to. I just thought." "Exactly," Thompson interrupted. "You thought. But you didn't think about the impact of your actions. You didn't consider how your prejudice could harm innocent people. My daughters are well-respected students at Maplewood High. They didn't deserve to be treated that way." Jake felt the heat rise to his cheeks, shame flooding his senses. "I understand, and I take full responsibility for what happened. I'm willing to accept any consequences." Thompson leaned back in his chair, studying Jake with an intensity that made him squirm. "I believe in accountability, Officer Harmon. But I also believe in second chances. This community deserves better than your misguided assumptions. What will you do to ensure this doesn't happen again?" I want to change," Jake stammered, feeling a rush of desperation. "I want to learn. I know I have biases, and I want to address them. I don't want to be that kind of officer." "Then you need to put in the work," Thompson replied, his tone softening slightly. "You'll be transferred to the Riverside Precinct, a predominantly black community. Your job will be to build relationships there, to learn from the people you interact with. You'll be immersed in their lives, and you'll have to earn their trust. If you are truly committed to changing, this is your opportunity." Jake's heart sank at the thought of leaving his home and family. "But sir, that's 3 hours away. My family is still your family, and they will be waiting for you when you return," Thompson said, cutting him off again. "You need to understand that sometimes we have to make sacrifices to become better versions of ourselves. This isn't just about you, it's about the community you serve." Jake took a deep breath, the reality of the situation settling over him like a lead weight. "I'll do it," he said finally, his voice steadier now. "I'll go to Riverside. I'll prove that I can change." "Good," Thompson replied, a hint of approval in his eyes. "You'll report there next week, and I expect updates on your progress." "Yes, sir," Jake replied, feeling a strange mix of relief and apprehension. As he left the office, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. But this time, it felt different. It was not just the burden of shame. It was the weight of responsibility. He needed to change to grow, and to earn the trust of a community he had wronged. Back in his cruiser, Jake drove through the familiar streets of Maplewood, but they felt different now. The houses that once seemed ordinary now appeared to hold stories he had never bothered to learn. He passed by the park where children played and families gathered, feeling a pang of regret for the assumptions he had made. The next week, as he packed up his belongings, the weight of uncertainty filled his chest. He had to leave behind everything he knew: the neighborhood, the school, his friends. But he also knew that this was an opportunity for growth. He thought of the twins, Alexis and Jordan, and how they had faced his prejudice with grace and dignity. If they could endure that, surely he could face his own challenges. The drive to Riverside was filled with trepidation. The landscape shifted from the familiar suburban sprawl of Maplewood to the vibrant, bustling streets of Riverside. As he entered the precinct, the sense of being an outsider washed over him. The station was older, the decor less polished, and he could feel the curious eyes of his new colleagues upon him as he stepped through the doors. "Officer Harmon," a voice called out, breaking through his thoughts. He turned to see Captain Rodriguez, a tall woman with a commanding presence. "Welcome to Riverside. I've heard about you." Jake swallowed hard, trying to maintain a steady composure. "Thank you, ma'am. I'm here to learn." "Good," she replied, her gaze piercing. "This community is different from what you're used to, and they'll be watching you closely. You need to earn their trust." "I understand," Jake said, determination lacing his words. "I'm ready to do what it takes." As he settled into his new role, Jake was assigned to patrol alongside Officer Marcus King, a veteran of the department known for his strong rapport with the community. King had seen it all and was determined to help Jake navigate the complexities of Riverside. "First things first," King said as they walked the streets on their first day together. "You need to be present. Engage with the community, not just as an officer, but as a person. Introduce yourself, learn their names, and listen to their stories." Jake nodded, feeling the mixture of excitement and anxiety. "I'll do my best." The first stop was a local cafe, a hub for residents to gather and share news. As they walked in, the chatter quieted, and all eyes turned to him. Jake felt the weight of their stares, the palpable tension in the air. "Hey, everyone," King called out, his voice friendly and warm. "This is Officer Harmon. He's new here, and he wants to get to know you all." The awkward silence hung in the air, but one older woman, Mrs. Jenkins, broke the ice. "Well, we know what you did, officer," she said, her voice steady. "But it's not too late to change." Jake felt the heat rise in his cheeks, but he nodded earnestly. "I know I messed up. I'm here to learn and do better." A younger man, wearing a baseball cap, chimed in. "We're watching, man. Don't think you can just throw on a uniform and call it a day. We want real change." "I'm here for it," Jake replied, his voice firm. "I want to prove to you all that I can be trusted." Slowly, the tension began to dissipate as conversations resumed, albeit cautiously. Jake realized that he had a long way to go, but the first step was acknowledging his past mistakes and demonstrating his commitment to change. Over the next few weeks, Jake immersed himself in the community, attending events, volunteering at local shelters, and participating in neighborhood meetings. He encountered skepticism and distrust, but he also met kindness and generosity. Families invited him into their homes, sharing their lives and stories, helping him understand the rich tapestry of Riverside. At one such event, a community barbecue in the park, Jake found himself surrounded by laughter and warmth. He flipped burgers on the grill, sharing jokes with the children who were excited to have an officer among them. As the sun set, the air filled with the aroma of grilled food and the sounds of joy. He felt a sense of belonging begin to bloom within him. "Looks like you're getting the hang of it," King said, leaning against the grill. "I'm trying," Jake admitted, glancing around at the families enjoying themselves. "This feels different. I feel like I'm part of something bigger." "Good," King replied, nodding in approval. "Keep building those connections. You're making progress." But the shadow of his past still loomed over him. Jake knew he had a long road ahead, and he was determined to walk it, step by step. The memory of the twins haunted him, reminding him of the consequences of his actions. He had to prove that he was more than just the mistakes of his past. One evening, as he returned to his temporary apartment, Jake received a phone call from Captain Rodriguez. "Officer Harmon, I need you to come into the station," she said, her tone urgent. "We have a situation developing in the neighborhood, and I want you to be involved." Jake's heart raced as he drove to the station, questions swirling in his mind. He arrived to find the precinct buzzing with activity. Officers were gathering equipment, discussing the situation at hand. "There's been a string of burglaries in the area," Rodriguez explained, her expression serious. "We need all hands on deck. The community is on edge, and we need to reassure them that we're here to protect them." Jake nodded, his determination reigniting. This was his chance to prove himself, to show that he could be an asset to the community. He joined the patrols, listening to residents share their fears and concerns. As they worked together to address the burglaries, Jake felt a shift within himself. He was no longer just a police officer in uniform. He was a part of the community, someone they could rely on. The connection he forged with the residents deepened his understanding of their struggles and aspirations. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the community began to embrace him. They started to share their stories, their hopes, and their challenges. Jake realized that he had a responsibility not just to enforce the law, but to listen, to learn, and to be a part of their lives. But deep down, he knew that trust had to be earned, and it wouldn't happen overnight. He carried the memory of the twins with him, a constant reminder of the consequences of his past actions. As he returned to the precinct one evening, he found King waiting for him. "Good work today," King said, his tone approving. "You're starting to get it." Jake felt a sense of pride swell within him. "Thanks, Officer King. I'm trying my best." "That's all anyone can ask," King replied. "Just keep showing up and keep listening. The more you do, the more they'll see you for who you are, not what you were." Jake nodded, determination igniting within him once again. He was ready to face the challenges ahead, ready to change the narrative, ready to prove that he could be the officer the community deserved. The twins' silent strength remained a guiding force, reminding him of the impact one person could have on another's life. With each passing day, he felt a little closer to redemption, a little closer to the change he sought. And in that journey, he hoped to not only find himself, but to help others along the way, one step at a time. Building bridges, the days in Riverside blended into a routine, a rhythm of community engagement that both challenged and inspired Officer Jake Harmon. Each morning, he would lace up his boots and step out into the neighborhood with a renewed sense of purpose, eager to connect with the residents and earn their trust. The vibrant streets bustled with life, and each corner held stories waiting to be uncovered. Jake's commitment to his new role became evident as he dove into community events and initiatives. One morning, he found himself at the local youth center, where he had volunteered to help coach a basketball team. The gym echoed with the sounds of bouncing balls and laughter as he watched the kids run drills, their energy infectious. "Hey, Officer Harmon," called out a boy named Jamal, a lanky 10-year-old with a contagious grin. "Think you can keep up with us?" Jake chuckled, feeling the warmth of camaraderie envelop him. "I'll do my best, but I might need a few pointers from you." As the practice unfolded, Jake found himself not just teaching the kids about basketball, but learning from them about resilience and teamwork. They worked together, running plays and sharing strategies, and the connections he built with each child deepened his understanding of their lives. After practice, as the kids gathered around him, a little girl named Mia stepped forward, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Officer, are you going to keep coming back? We like having you here." Jake felt a swell of emotion as he nodded. "Absolutely, Mia. I'm here to support you all, and I want to see you grow and succeed." As the weeks passed, Jake's presence at the youth center became a regular occurrence. He developed relationships with the kids, attending their games and helping them with schoolwork. They began to see him not just as a cop but as a mentor and friend, someone they could rely on. Outside the gym, Jake made it a point to engage with parents and community members. He attended neighborhood meetings where he listened to their concerns about safety and shared ideas for building a stronger community. The more he learned about their experiences, the more he understood the gravity of his past mistakes. One evening, after a particularly lively community meeting, Jake was approached by a group of parents who had noticed his efforts. "We appreciate you being here, Officer Harmon," said Miss Thompson, a mother of 3. "It's nice to see someone who genuinely wants to help." "Thank you," Jake replied, humbled by their words. "I'm just trying to do my part. I know I have a long way to go, but I'm committed to earning your trust." "You're doing great," chimed in Mr. Johnson, who ran a local barbershop. "It's not easy to break down barriers, but you're making an effort. And we noticed that." Feeling a sense of encouragement, Jake left the meeting that night with a renewed sense of purpose. However, he also knew that the road to redemption was paved with challenges. The community was still cautious, and he had to continuously prove himself. One Saturday morning, he volunteered to help organize a community cleanup event. Armed with trash bags and a team of enthusiastic volunteers, Jake set out to pick up litter from the neighborhood parks and streets. As they worked side by side, the conversations flowed freely, breaking down the walls that had initially divided them. "Why did you become a cop?" asked a teenager named Malik, who was sweeping up leaves nearby. Jake paused, considering his answer. "Honestly, I wanted to help people, but I lost sight of that for a while. I made some mistakes, and now I'm trying to do better." Malik nodded thoughtfully. "We all mess up. What matters is what you do after." Jake felt a wave of gratitude for the understanding he found in the youth. It reminded him of his own journey toward growth and the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, Jake found himself reflecting on the twins, Alexis and Jordan, and their silent strength in the face of his prejudice. He hoped to honor their resilience by becoming a better officer, one who fought against the very biases that had once blinded him. A week later, a surprise opportunity presented itself when Officer King invited him to participate in a community event at Riverside Park. "We're hosting a Meet Your Police Day," King explained. "It's a chance for residents to come out, meet us, and ask questions. It's important for them to see that we're here to serve, not just enforce." Jake's heart raced at the prospect. "What can I do?" "You'll help set up the booths and engage with the residents," King said. "Just be yourself and let them see you for who you are, not who you were." The day of the event arrived, and the park buzzed with excitement. Colorful banners decorated the space, and families gathered around picnic tables laden with food. Kids ran about, playing games, while parents chatted and exchanged stories. Jake felt a thrill of nervous anticipation as he set up his booth alongside Officer King, who was preparing to talk about community safety. As the crowd swelled, Jake began to interact with residents, introducing himself and asking questions. "Hi, I'm Officer Harmon," he said, forcing a smile as a group of parents approached. "I'm new here, but I'm eager to get to know everyone." "I've seen you at the youth center," one father said, nodding in recognition. "You're doing a good job with the kids. They seem to like you." "Thanks. I'm really enjoying it," Jake replied, feeling encouraged by the positive feedback. As the afternoon wore on, Jake's nerves began to dissipate. He laughed with the kids, listened to their stories, and shared his own experiences. The sense of community began to envelop him, and he felt a genuine connection with those around him. Suddenly, a familiar face caught his eye. It was Mrs. Jenkins, the elderly woman he had helped rescue from the fire. She approached him with a warm smile, her eyes twinkling with gratitude. "Officer Harmon, it's so good to see you here." "Mrs. Jenkins, I'm glad you could make it," Jake said, his heart lifting. "How have you been?" "Getting back on my feet, thanks to all the wonderful people in this community," she replied, her voice filled with warmth. "You were a big help that day, you know." "I was just doing my job," Jake said, humbled. "But it's nice to see the community rallying around you." Mrs. Jenkins nodded, her expression serious. "These people care for one another, and it's important that you understand that. They've been through a lot. If you want to earn their trust, you have to show them that you care too." Jake absorbed her words, the weight of their meaning sinking in. "I will, Mrs. Jenkins. I want to be here for everyone." The event continued to unfold around them, And as Jake watched families come together, he felt a sense of belonging begin to take root within him. This was what he had been searching for, real connections with the community he served. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over Riverside Park, Jake stood at the edge of the gathering, feeling a surge of hope. He had come a long way from the officer who had let his prejudices dictate his actions. He had learned to listen, to understand, and to be a part of something bigger than himself. But just as he began to feel comfortable, a group of teenagers approached, their faces wary. Among them was Malik, the boy who had asked about his motivations weeks earlier. "Officer Harmon," Malik said, crossing his arms defiantly, "I just wanted to ask, what happens if you mess up again? What if you don't change?" The question hung in the air, and Jake's heart sank. He understood the skepticism. He had been in their shoes before. "If I mess up again, I'll take responsibility," he replied earnestly. "I'm committed to doing better, and I hope to show you all that I can be trusted." Malik studied him for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You say that, but how do we know it's not just words?" "I understand," Jake said, his voice steady. "Actions speak louder than words, and I'm prepared to prove myself every single day." Malik nodded slowly, his skepticism still present, but softened by the sincerity in Jake's eyes. "Okay, just know we're watching. We want to see you do better, but we'll hold you accountable." Jake felt a sense of relief wash over him. "That's fair. I want to earn your trust. I'm here to listen and learn." As the event drew to a close, Jake realized that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, skepticism, and setbacks. But he also knew that with each interaction, each connection he made, he was one step closer to redemption. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving a stunning display of colors in its wake. As the last of the families began to pack up their belongings, Jake felt a deep sense of gratitude for the chance to be a part of this community. He was ready to embrace the work ahead, ready to build bridges, and ready to transform his understanding of what it truly meant to serve. With a heart full of hope and a renewed sense of purpose, Jake Harmon took a deep breath, knowing that the journey to change was just beginning. Trials and triumphs. As the weeks turned into months, Officer Jake Harmon settled deeper into his new role in Riverside. The once daunting precinct now felt like a second home, a place where he was learning to redefine his identity, not just as a police officer but as a member of a vibrant community. With each day, the bond he forged with the residents grew stronger, built on shared experiences and mutual respect. However, not all was smooth sailing. While many began to warm up to him, there remained a segment of the community that remained skeptical. Jake knew that trust was not something that could be demanded. It had to be earned, and he was determined to prove that he was worthy of it. One crisp Saturday morning, as autumn leaves began to paint the streets in hues of orange and gold, Jake joined Officer King at the community center. They were set to organize a youth basketball tournament, an event aimed at fostering relationships between the police and the kids in the neighborhood. Jake felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as he prepared for the day ahead. "Remember, it's not just about basketball," King advised, his tone serious yet encouraging. "It's about building relationships. Be approachable, be friendly, and show these kids you care." Jake nodded, understanding the importance of the event. As families began to trickle in, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Children darted around, their laughter echoing through the gymnasium, while parents chatted amongst themselves, exchanging stories and advice. "Officer Harmon," a familiar voice called out, drawing his attention. It was Malik, the teenager who had challenged him about his past. "Are you ready to lose today?" Jake laughed, feeling the camaraderie grow. "We'll see about that. I'm ready to give it my all." As the tournament commenced, Jake found himself immersed in the rhythm of the game. He cheered for the kids, offering high fives and encouragement, feeling a sense of belonging envelop him. The initial walls of skepticism that had once surrounded him seemed to crumble with each laugh and shared moment. However, amidst the fun, Jake noticed a group of boys lingering on the sidelines. They were older teens, and their demeanor suggested they were not here for the game. Their eyes held a certain hardness, and Jake felt a prickle of unease. "Who are they?" he asked King, nodding toward the group. "Those are some of the neighborhood kids who've had a rough time. They don't trust cops, and they have their reasons," King replied, his voice low. "But if you want to make a difference, you might want to try and engage with them." Taking a deep breath, Jake approached the group, determined to break through their defenses. "Hey, fellas," he called out, trying to sound casual. "You all here to watch the tournament?" One of the boys, a tall young man with a piercing gaze, crossed his arms defiantly. "Yeah, we're watching." "What's it to you, cop?" "I just thought you might want to join in," Jake replied, keeping his tone friendly. "It's a lot of fun, and we could use more players." The boy snorted, clearly unimpressed. "Why would we want to play with you? You're just here to patrol us, right?" Jake's heart sank a little, but he stood his ground. "I get it. You might think I'm just another cop out to enforce the law. But I'm here to learn and support you. I want to change the way we interact." "Yeah, sure," another boy scoffed. "You can say that all you want, but it's not like you care about us." Jake felt a surge of frustration mixed with determination. "I know it's hard to believe, but I do care. I want to show you that I'm different. Why not give me a chance?" Silence hung in the air, and Jake held his breath, hoping to break through the wall they had built around themselves. After a moment, the first boy uncrossed his arms, looking at his friends for reassurance. "Fine, we'll play. But if you mess up, don't expect us to go easy on you." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him as they agreed to join. "That's all I ask. Let's have some fun." The game kicked off, and as the hours passed, Jake found himself not just coaching but genuinely playing alongside the teens. The ice began to break, and laughter filled the gym. They teased each other, celebrated good plays, and for the first time, Jake felt like he was truly connecting with the younger generation. But even amid the laughter, he was aware of the challenges that lay ahead. After the tournament ended, the boys huddled together, discussing their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. Jake listened intently, understanding the barriers they faced daily. "Do you know what it's like to grow up here?" Malik asked, his tone shifting from playful to serious. "We deal with so much. Cops don't see us. They only see our skin color." Jake swallowed hard, the weight of his past actions crashing over him. "I know I've made mistakes. I want to do better. I want to understand." One of the boys, a younger kid named Eric, piped up. "If you really want to change, you gotta start by listening to us. Not just to the ones who are nice to you, but to all of us." "Yeah," Malik added, his expression softening. "You can't just be a cop who shows up for the fun stuff. You need to be there when things are tough too." "I promise I'll be here," Jake replied earnestly. "I want to support you all, not just as an officer, but as a person who cares." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Jake felt a sense of purpose solidifying within him. The challenges were immense, but he was committed to fostering real connections and understanding the lives of those he served. The following week, Jake found himself patrolling Riverside with a renewed sense of determination. He approached every interaction with an open mind, eager to learn from the residents and earn their trust. He volunteered at community events, helped organize neighborhood cleanups, and engaged with the youth center, continually reinforcing the connections he had forged. But despite his best efforts, there were still obstacles to overcome. One afternoon, while on patrol, he received a call about a disturbance in a local park. As he arrived, he noticed a group of teenagers arguing loudly, their voices rising above the sound of laughter and music that filled the air. "Hey, break it up," Jake commanded, stepping forward as the argument escalated. The teenagers turned to him, their expressions a mix of anger and defiance. "Stay out of this, cop," one shouted, a boy with a bandana tied around his head. "Look, I'm here to help, not to cause trouble," Jake replied, trying to maintain his composure. "What's going on?" "None of your business." Another girl spat, her fists clenched. As tensions flared, Jake took a deep breath, reminding himself of his commitment to listen and understand. "I get it. You're all frustrated. But let's talk this out instead of fighting. Violence isn't the answer." The boy with the bandana sneered. "You think just because you wear a badge, you can tell us what to do. You don't know us." Jake felt the weight of their distrust, but he refused to back down. "I'm not here to tell you what to do. I want to hear your side. What's really bothering you?" Slowly, the arguments quieted as the group hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Finally, a girl stepped forward, her expression softening. "It's just, no one listens to us. It's like we don't matter." "That's not true," Jake said, his voice steady. "You matter. Your voices matter. And I want to make sure you're heard. Let's talk about what's going on. What can we do to help?" After a moment of silence, the tension began to dissolve, and the group started to share their frustrations. They spoke of the lack of resources in the community, their feelings of being marginalized, and the challenges they faced daily. As they opened up, Jake listened intently, nodding in understanding and acknowledging their struggles. By the time the conversation ended, Jake felt a sense of accomplishment. He had managed to diffuse a potentially volatile situation by simply listening and engaging. The kids left the park. Their anger dissipated, and a glimmer of hope flickered in their eyes as they recognized that their voices had been heard. Later that evening, as Jake reflected on the day's events, he realized how far he had come. The lessons he had learned from the twins, the community, and his own mistakes were beginning to shape him into the officer he aspired to be. The following Saturday, Jake attended a local church service, where the pastor welcomed him warmly. "Officer Harmon has been working hard to engage with our community," the pastor announced, drawing attention to Jake as he stood awkwardly at the front. "Let's show him our appreciation for his efforts." Jake felt the warmth of the congregation's support as they clapped, but he also sensed the lingering skepticism. This was a place of healing, and he was determined to honor that. As the service progressed, the pastor spoke of forgiveness, redemption, and the importance of community. His words resonated deeply with Jake, and he felt a renewed commitment to his journey of transformation. He recognized that true change required not just action, but humility and grace. After the service, several members approached him, sharing their thoughts and concerns about the neighborhood. Jake listened intently, asking questions and taking notes. He was eager to continue building bridges and fostering understanding. Weeks turned into months, and Jake's relationship with the community began to solidify. He was no longer just a badge. He was a friend, a mentor, and a resource for the residents. Each interaction chipped away at the barriers that had previously divided them. One day, while patrolling the streets, Jake spotted Malik hanging out with his friends near a corner store. He pulled over, rolling down the window. "Hey, Malik. You up for a game later?" Malik grinned, clearly surprised. "Sure, Officer Harmon. You coming to the youth center?" Jake nodded, feeling a surge of excitement. "Count on it. I'll bring some snacks, too." As he drove away, Jake felt a wave of fulfillment wash over him. The relationships he had forged were beginning to blossom into something beautiful, a testament to the power of understanding and compassion. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. Reports of a string of robberies began to circulate, leaving the community on edge. Residents were anxious, and the trust Jake had worked so hard to build began to waver. The atmosphere grew tense as fear crept into the hearts of the people. Jake knew that he had to act swiftly to reassure the community. He organized a meeting at the community center, inviting residents to discuss their concerns and to collaborate on solutions. That evening, as Jake prepared for the meeting, he felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. He knew this was a pivotal moment in his journey. The community was counting on him to lead the charge in addressing their fears and finding solutions to the recent wave of crime. As residents filled the center, Jake stood at the front, looking out at the sea of faces, some familiar, others new. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady but sincere. "I know that recent events have left many of you feeling vulnerable. I'm here to listen, to help, and to work with you to make our community safer." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and Jake took a deep breath, ready to face whatever questions or concerns might arise. "Why should we trust you?" a woman in the back called out, her tone challenging. "You're just another cop who might turn his back on us when it gets tough." Jake nodded, understanding her skepticism. "You're right. I've made mistakes, and I know trust has to be earned. But I want to work alongside you to address our challenges. We need your input to find solutions." A young man stood up, his expression serious. "What's your plan then? How are you going to keep us safe?" Jake outlined the steps he had already begun to take: increased patrols, collaboration with local organizations, and outreach programs to build relationships. "But I need your help," he added earnestly. "If you see something, say something. We need to work together to create a safer environment for everyone." As the meeting continued, Jake felt the tension begin to ease. Residents started to share their thoughts, fears, and suggestions. The dialogue became a collaborative effort, and by the end of the night, the room buzzed with ideas and initiatives aimed at addressing the concerns of the community. As people began to leave, Jake felt a sense of accomplishment swell within him. He had faced their fears head-on and opened the door for constructive dialogue. But he knew the path ahead was still fraught with challenges. Later that week, as Jake continued to patrol the neighborhood, he found himself feeling more optimistic than ever. He had made significant strides in building trust, but he was aware that recent events would require ongoing dedication. The community's safety depended not just on him but on the collective efforts of everyone involved. One chilly evening, as he wrapped up a long shift, he received a call about a suspected break-in at a local business. Adrenaline surged through him as he raced toward the scene, knowing that every moment counted. Arriving at the store, he found a small crowd gathered outside, their expressions anxious. "What happened?" Jake asked, stepping out of his cruiser. The owner, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Chen, stepped forward, her hands shaking. "I heard glass shattering and saw someone running away." Jake's heart raced as he began to assess the situation. "Did you see which way they went?" She pointed down the street, her voice trembling. "They ran that way." Without hesitation, Jake took off in the direction she indicated, his instincts kicking in. He rounded a corner and spotted a figure darting into an alleyway. He called out, "Stop! Police!" as he pursued the suspect. The chase led him deeper into the winding streets, adrenaline fueling his determination. Just as he thought he'd lost them, he spotted a shadow slipping behind a dumpster. "Show yourself," Jake commanded, adrenaline coursing through him. He approached cautiously, his hand resting on his weapon. "I won't ask again." The figure hesitated, and then emerged slowly. A teenage boy, no older than 16, his face a mask of fear and desperation. "Please, don't hurt me," the boy pleaded, his eyes wide with panic. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jake said, lowering his weapon slightly. "But you need to tell me what happened back there." "I didn't mean to break in. I was just looking for something to eat," the boy stammered, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I'm hungry. My family. We don't have anything." Jake's heart sank as he processed the boy's words. This wasn't just a petty criminal. It was a young person desperate for help. "How old are you?" he asked gently. 16, the boy replied, his voice trembling. "Where's your family?" Jake asked, his tone shifting from authority to compassion. They're struggling. My mom lost her job, and we haven't eaten in days." The boy's voice cracked as he spoke, the weight of his situation pressing heavily on him. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Listen, I'm going to help you," but you need to come with me. We can talk about this." As he led the boy back to the scene, Jake felt a mix of emotions whirling within him. This was not just about enforcing the law. It was about understanding the roots of the issues that plagued their community. He had seen the challenges families faced, and it was time to confront them head-on. Back at the store, he explained the situation to Mrs. Chen, who looked surprised but compassionate. "I'm willing to work with you, Officer Harmon," she said, her voice steady. "If he's truly in need, perhaps we can find a way to help." Over the following weeks, Jake worked closely with local organizations and charities to address the boy's situation. They provided food and resources for his family, ensuring that no one in the community had to go hungry. Through this experience, Jake learned that true policing was about more than enforcing the law. It was about listening, understanding, and taking action to create a better environment for everyone. He was beginning to reshape his identity as a police officer, moving away from the rigid, authoritative mindset that had once defined him. As winter approached, Jake found himself filled with gratitude for the connections he had built in Riverside. He had transformed his approach to policing, embracing the notion that he was not just there to maintain order, but to be an integral part of the community he served. But challenges still lay ahead. One night, while patrolling, he received a call about a disturbance at a nearby apartment complex. As he arrived, he noticed the tension in the air. Residents stood outside, whispering and pointing. "Is it a robbery?" one woman asked anxiously. "Just stay back, please," Jake instructed, his heart racing. "Let me handle this." As he approached the building, he could hear shouting coming from one of the apartments. Without hesitation, he pushed through the door, ready to intervene. Inside, he found a scene that broke his heart. A young mother was arguing with her partner, their voices raised in anger. Their children stood nearby, tears streaming down their faces. "Stop it. You're scaring them," Jake shouted, stepping forward to separate them. "What's going on here?" The mother, her eyes filled with fear and frustration, turned to him. "He's been drinking. He doesn't care about us." The man stumbled forward, his breath reeking of alcohol. "You don't know anything, cop. You don't live our life." Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "You're right. I don't. But I'm here to help. Let's talk this out and find a way to keep your kids safe." As the situation unfolded, Jake remained calm, using the techniques he had learned during his time in Riverside. He de-escalated the argument, speaking to the couple with empathy and understanding. Slowly, the anger began to dissipate, and Jake guided them toward finding a resolution. After an hour of conversation, the tension in the room had eased significantly. Jake arranged for the family to receive counseling and support, ensuring that they could get the help they needed. When he finally left the apartment, Jake felt a sense of accomplishment and purpose. He was making a difference, one family at a time. The connection he had built with the community was growing stronger, and he felt more committed than ever to fostering understanding and compassion. Yet, the shadows of his past loomed large. As he drove through Riverside that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was still much work to be done. The journey to redemption was not complete, and he had to remain vigilant in his efforts to build trust and make a lasting impact. As the holiday season approached, Jake found himself reflecting on the lessons he had learned and the relationships he had forged. He was determined to continue on this path of growth, embracing the challenges that lay ahead while cherishing the connections he had built. The community was watching him, and he was ready to prove that he was worthy of their trust, one step at a time. Shadows of the past. The air turned crisp as winter settled over Riverside, the streets adorned with twinkling lights and decorations that brought a festive cheer to the community. As the holiday season approached, Jake Harmon felt a renewed sense of purpose. His commitment to fostering relationships with the residents and addressing their concerns had become a driving force in his life. With the arrival of the holidays, Jake organized a community potluck at the youth center. It was an opportunity for everyone to come together, share a meal, and celebrate the connections they had built over the past months. The gymnasium was transformed into a warm and inviting space, filled with laughter, the scent of homemade dishes, and the vibrant energy of families coming together. "Officer Harmon," shouted Jamal, sprinting towards him with a plate piled high with food. "I brought my mom's famous mac and cheese. You've got to try it." Jake grinned, accepting the plate. "I can't wait. This looks amazing, Jamal. You'll have to tell me your secret." As the evening unfolded, Jake moved from table to table, engaging with families and enjoying the festive spirit. The barriers that had once existed were slowly dissolving. People laughed, shared stories, and welcomed him into their lives as if he had always been a part of the community. As he stood in the corner of the gym, observing the joyful chaos around him, he spotted Malik chatting with a group of younger kids. The young man had grown more confident, embracing his role as a mentor to the younger generation. Jake felt a surge of pride as he watched the positive influence he had on those around him. But just as the warmth of the evening enveloped him, a shadow flickered in the back of his mind, reminders of the biases he had once held and the mistakes he had made. He was reminded of the twin girls, Alexis and Jordan, and the prejudice that had led him to detain them unjustly. They had shown such grace in the face of his ignorance, and he was determined to honor that by continuing his journey of growth. As the festivities continued, Jake decided to make a short speech. He stood up in front of the gathering, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. "Hey, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to say how grateful I am for this community," he began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. "You all have welcomed me with open arms, and it means the world to me. I know I have a lot to prove, and I'm committed to serving you with integrity and respect." Applause erupted, and Jake felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "Thank you all for being here tonight. Let's keep building this community together, and remember, I'm here to listen, to learn, and to support you in any way I can." The night wore on, filled with laughter, dancing, and heartfelt conversations. As Jake mingled with the crowd, he found himself in a conversation with Mrs. Jenkins, the woman he had rescued from the fire months earlier. "Officer Harmon," she said, her voice warm and encouraging, "you've truly become a part of us. I can see the change in you, and I know the community feels it too." "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins. That means a lot coming from you," Jake replied, his heart swelling with appreciation. "I'm trying to make a difference, and your support has been invaluable." As the evening drew to a close, Jake felt a sense of fulfillment that he hadn't experienced in a long time. He had come so far from the officer who had let his biases dictate his actions. The community had embraced him, and he was beginning to embrace them in return. However, just as he began to feel comfortable in his new skin, the shadows of his past crept back into his life. The following week, a news report surfaced about a series of controversial incidents involving police officers in nearby districts. Allegations of excessive force and racial profiling flooded social media, igniting outrage in the community. Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he read the comments online. Many residents were quick to draw connections between those incidents and his own past. "How can we trust Officer Harmon?" One post read, "He's just another cop." The weight of their skepticism pressed heavily on his shoulders. He knew that despite the progress he had made, he was still battling the ghosts of his past. Feeling the urgency of the situation, Jake decided to address the community head-on. He called for an emergency meeting at the youth center, determined to be transparent and open about the concerns affecting their neighborhood. On the night of the meeting, the gymnasium was filled with a mix of familiar faces and newcomers. The atmosphere was charged with tension, and Jake could feel the weight of their gazes upon him as he took the stage. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady but infused with sincerity. "I know there are concerns about recent events involving police officers in our area, and I want to address them openly." The room was quiet, the air thick with anticipation. Jake took a deep breath, his heart racing. "I understand why some of you may feel hesitant to trust me or any officer. I know that my past actions have cast a long shadow, and it's important to me that you know I am committed to doing better." As he spoke, he noticed Malik sitting near the front, his expression serious. Jake knew that the stakes were high. "I am here to listen to your concerns. I want to know how I can support you and be a part of the solution." A hand shot up from the back of the room. It was a woman with an assertive presence. "What are you going to do to make sure we're protected? How can we trust that you won't turn against us like other officers have?" Jake nodded, acknowledging the gravity of her question. "I hear you, and I want you to know that I am actively working to build trust. I've spent the last few months engaging with this community, learning from you all, and I am committed to making sure that every voice is heard." The tension in the room began to ease slightly as people started to share their thoughts and experiences. They spoke of their fears, their frustrations, and their hopes for a better future. Jake listened intently, taking notes and making mental commitments to follow up on each concern. As the meeting progressed, he felt a sense of unity forming in the room, a collective understanding that they were all striving for a safer community together. The conversation turned to practical solutions: increased community outreach, more transparency in policing, and programs to foster positive relationships between officers and residents. "Can we create a community advisory board?" Malik suggested, his voice strong and clear. "We need a platform where we can express our concerns and hold you accountable." Jake nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "That's an excellent idea. I'll work to establish a board that includes community members, and we can address issues together moving forward." As the meeting came to a close, Jake felt a renewed sense of hope. The residents were not just willing to give him a chance, they were eager to collaborate and create positive change together. But even as the meeting ended on a high note, Jake knew that the challenges were far from over. The news stories continued to unfold, and tensions in the community remained high. He had to stay vigilant, ready to address any issues that arose. A few days later, as Jake continued his patrol, he received a call about a potential robbery in progress at a local convenience store. Adrenaline surged through him as he sped toward the scene, aware of the urgency of the situation. Upon arrival, he found the store surrounded by police cars. Officers were already inside, but Jake took a moment to assess the situation outside. He could see a small crowd gathering, their faces painted with concern. "Stay back, everyone," he shouted, his voice steady. "Let the officers handle this." As he entered the store, he spotted the manager, a middle-aged man with a frantic expression. They took everything. They had guns. Jake's heart raced as he gathered information from the witnesses. The fear in the air was palpable, and he knew that how they responded could shape the community's perception of the police. "Did anyone get a good look at the suspects?" Jake asked, his focus sharp. "I think they were wearing masks, but one had a red hoodie," a young woman replied, her voice trembling. It happened so fast. As the officers gathered details, Jake felt the familiar tension in the air. This was a test, an opportunity to show the community that he was there to protect and serve. He coordinated with his colleagues, gathering information and piecing together a plan. They established a perimeter and began canvassing the area, seeking witnesses and looking for any leads. In the midst of the chaos, Jake's thoughts drifted back to the meeting at the youth center. This was a moment where he could prove to the community that he was committed to keeping them safe. As they searched the surrounding blocks, Jake spotted a group of young men lingering near an alleyway. He felt a surge of instinct telling him to approach them. "Hey, fellas," Jake called out, his tone friendly but authoritative. "Did you see anything unusual? There was a robbery at the store nearby." The group exchanged wary glances, their body language tense. "We didn't see anything," one of them replied, his voice defensive. Jake took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Listen, I know things can be tense between us, but I'm here to help. If you know anything, it could make a difference." The young man hesitated, then shrugged. "I heard some noise, but it was too far away. I didn't think much of it." As the conversation unfolded, Jake recognized the importance of establishing trust. He had to show them that he was not just another cop on the prowl, but someone who genuinely cared about their community. "Look, I'm just trying to keep everyone safe," Jake said, leaning in slightly. "If you hear anything, please let me know. I'm here to listen." The group began to soften, and Jake could sense their hesitation fading. "All right," the young man finally said. "We'll let you know if we hear anything. Just keep doing your thing, man." Jake felt a surge of relief as he left the alleyway, knowing he had taken a step toward building rapport with the young men. He had proven that he was willing to listen, to engage, and to be a part of their lives. Over the next few days, as the investigation into the robbery continued, Jake remained vigilant, staying connected with the community and maintaining open lines of communication. The trust he had built began to pay off when, during a routine patrol, he received a tip from a local shop owner. "I heard some kids talking about a red hoodie," the shopkeeper said, leaning over the counter. "They might know something about that robbery." Jake's heart raced with anticipation. "Do you know where I can find them?" "Yeah, they usually hang out at the park down the street," the shopkeeper replied. "I'd be careful, though. They're not the friendliest bunch." Jake thanked him and made his way to the park, determination driving him forward. As he arrived, he spotted a group of teenagers loitering near the swings, their demeanor suggestive of mischief. "Hey, guys," Jake called out, approaching them with a friendly demeanor. "Can I talk to you for a second?" The group turned to him, their expressions cautious but curious. "What do you want, cop?" one boy asked, his arms crossed defiantly. "I'm just looking for some information about the robbery that happened at the convenience store," Jake explained, keeping his tone light. "I heard you might know something." At first, the boys exchanged glances, but slowly their defensiveness began to crack. "We heard some stuff," one of them admitted, "but it's not safe to talk about it here." "Let's find a place where you feel comfortable," Jake suggested. "I want to hear what you know without any pressure." After a moment of hesitation, they agreed, and the group led him to a quieter area of the park. Once they settled on a bench, the atmosphere shifted, and the boys began to share what they knew about the robbery. "We saw the guys who did it," one boy said, his voice low. "They were hanging around earlier, looking for trouble." Jake listened intently, asking questions and taking notes. With each piece of information they provided, he felt the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. This was the moment he had been waiting for, an opportunity to prove that he could be trusted, that he was there to protect and serve. "Thank you for sharing this with me," Jake said earnestly, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I promise to take this seriously, and I'll keep your names confidential." As the boys departed, Jake felt a sense of accomplishment. He had not only gathered valuable information, but had also begun to bridge the gap between himself and the youth in the community. Back at the precinct, Jake and his team followed up on the leads, leading to a successful arrest of the suspects involved in the robbery. The sense of relief in the community was palpable, and for the first time in a long time, Jake felt like he was genuinely making a difference. As he shared the news with the residents at the next neighborhood meeting, he could see the shift in their attitudes. They were beginning to see him not just as a cop, but as a partner in their safety and well-being. The weeks rolled on, and as Christmas approached, Jake found himself surrounded by a sense of warmth and belonging. He helped organize a holiday toy drive for families in need, reaching out to local businesses and residents to collect donations. The community rallied together, showcasing the strength of their unity. On the day of the toy distribution, Jake arrived at the community center, where families lined up outside, eagerly awaiting the event. He watched as parents and children filled the space with laughter, the atmosphere charged with excitement. "Officer Harmon," shouted a little girl named Sophia, rushing up to him with a beaming smile. "I can't wait to get my toy." Jake knelt down to her level, returning her smile. "I can't wait to see what you pick out, Sophia. There are so many great toys for everyone." As families filtered in, Jake felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the community's resilience. This was what he had been striving for, to be a part of something greater than himself, to help those in need, and to foster an environment where everyone felt safe and supported. After the toys had been distributed, Jake stepped outside, feeling the crisp winter air on his face. He took a moment to reflect on how far he had come. The shadows of his past no longer haunted him. Instead, they had become stepping stones toward growth and understanding. But just as he began to feel at peace, he noticed a group of teenagers hanging back, their expressions cautious. Among them was Malik, who caught his eye. "Hey, Officer Harmon," Malik called out, stepping forward. "Can we talk for a sec?" "Of course," Jake replied, his heart racing slightly. "What's on your mind?" "We just wanted to say thanks for everything you've been doing," Malik said, his tone sincere. "The tournament, the toys. It's made a difference." Jake felt warmth spread through him. "I appreciate that, but it's really about all of you. You've shown me what it means to be part of this community." Malik nodded, his expression serious. "But we're still watching, you know. We want to see you keep it up, not just during the holidays." "I understand," Jake said earnestly, "and I promise to keep doing my part. I'm here for you all year round." As they spoke, Jake realized that he had finally become part of the fabric of Riverside. The trust he had been working to earn was beginning to solidify into something meaningful, a partnership built on understanding, respect, and mutual support. As the holiday season drew to a close, Jake felt a renewed sense of hope. He knew that the road ahead would still hold challenges, but he was ready to face them head-on. With the community beside him, he was determined to continue his journey of growth, to be the officer they deserved, and to stand as a beacon of support in a world that often felt divided. Jake smiled at Malik and the other teens, ready to embrace whatever came next. The shadows of the past no longer defined him. Instead, they had become the foundation for a brighter future, one filled with promise, connection, and understanding. New beginnings. As the new year dawned over Riverside, a sense of hope filled the air. The snow that blanketed the streets sparkled under the bright winter sun, a perfect metaphor for the fresh start Jake Harmon had embraced. He stood at the community center, preparing for the first event of the year, a New Year's resolution workshop aimed at fostering connections between residents and local law enforcement. "Officer Harmon," a voice called out, breaking his thoughts. It was Jamal, the enthusiastic boy from the youth center, bounding toward him with uncontained excitement. "Are you ready for the workshop? I brought my mom. She wants to talk to you about safety in our neighborhood." Jake smiled, feeling the warmth of camaraderie that had blossomed over the past months. "Absolutely, Jamal. I'm glad to see you and your mom here. It's going to be a great day." As people began to gather, Jake felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. The workshop was a chance to not only address community concerns, but also to reinforce the bonds he had worked so hard to build. He wanted everyone to feel heard and empowered, knowing that their voices mattered in shaping the community they all called home. The workshop kicked off with Jake welcoming everyone and sharing his own New Year's resolutions, commitments to continue learning, to engage with the community, and to build trust. As he spoke, he could see the expressions of skepticism softening among the crowd, replaced by curiosity and openness. After his introduction, he invited residents to share their thoughts on what they hoped to achieve in the coming year, both personally and as a community. Hands shot up as people eagerly shared their aspirations, starting new businesses, improving neighborhood safety, and fostering positive relationships among residents and police. As the workshop progressed, one woman named Rosa stood up, her voice steady. "I want to see more community events that include police officers, not just for safety reasons, but to break down the barriers that exist." "Absolutely," Jake replied, nodding vigorously. "Events like this one are a great way to build those connections. What kind of events do you think would be most effective?" The room buzzed with ideas. Some suggested youth programs, while others advocated for family movie nights in the park or block parties to promote unity. Jake took notes, feeling a sense of excitement about the possibilities ahead. By the time the workshop wrapped up, Jake felt a renewed sense of hope and commitment to the community. The gathering had shown him that people wanted to engage, to work together, and to create a safer environment for everyone. As the weeks rolled on, Jake and Officer King worked tirelessly to implement the ideas generated during the workshop. They organized monthly community events, aiming to provide spaces where residents could come together, share their concerns, and collaborate on solutions. One of the first events was a community cleanup day, where families were invited to join in sprucing up Riverside's parks and public spaces. Jake felt a sense of fulfillment as he saw families working side by side, laughing and enjoying each other's company while making a tangible difference. But with each step forward, Jake was reminded that not everyone in the community was fully on board with the changes. One afternoon, while patrolling near the local park, he overheard a group of young men whispering as he passed. Their hushed tones and wary expressions made him acutely aware of the lingering skepticism that still existed. Determined to engage rather than retreat, Jake turned to them. "Hey, guys. What's going on? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the cleanup event." The group exchanged glances, clearly hesitant. One of the boys, a tall young man with a serious demeanor, finally spoke up. "What's the point, man? You're just here to do your job. You don't really care about us." Jake took a deep breath, feeling the familiar weight of skepticism. "I get it. I've made mistakes in the past, and I know that trust isn't something that can be demanded. But I want to change that perception. I'm here to listen, not just to enforce the law." The boy crossed his arms, his expression challenging. "Prove it then. Show us that you're different. Talk to us, don't just give us the cop speech." With that, Jake knew he had to step up his game. "All right, how about we grab some coffee? I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we can do to make Riverside a better place for everyone." To his surprise, the group accepted his invitation. As they walked to a nearby cafe, Jake felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation. This was an opportunity to break down barriers, and he was determined to seize it. Over coffee, the conversation flowed more easily than he had expected. The young men opened up about their experiences, sharing stories of their struggles and frustrations with the police. They expressed feelings of being misunderstood and marginalized, and Jake listened intently, acknowledging their pain. "I never knew it was like that," he admitted. "I want to understand your perspective so I can do better. What do you want from me and the rest of the police?" One of the boys, a younger kid named Eric, spoke up. "Just be real with us. Don't act like you're above us. If we're going to work together, we need to feel like you're actually on our side." Jake nodded, absorbing their feedback. "I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'm here to support you, and I want to create a space where we can all feel safe and valued." As they finished their coffees, Jake felt a sense of connection forming. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was a step toward rebuilding trust, one conversation at a time. The following days continued to unfold with a mixture of triumphs and challenges. The community events garnered positive attention, and people began to see the value in building relationships. However, the lingering skepticism among some residents reminded Jake that there was still work to be done. In the midst of it all, Jake received an unexpected call from the DA's office. He was invited to attend a community forum focused on public safety and policing. The forum was designed to address the community's concerns and foster a dialogue between law enforcement and residents. Nervous but determined, Jake arrived at the forum, where residents filled the auditorium. As he took the stage alongside District Attorney Thompson and other local leaders, he felt the weight of expectation bearing down on him. "Good evening, everyone," Jake began, his voice steady. "I'm here to listen and learn. I want to hear your concerns and work together to create solutions that benefit our community." The crowd was diverse, a mixture of families, youth, and community leaders. As the discussions unfolded, Various residents voiced their frustrations, sharing personal stories of experiences with the police that had left them feeling vulnerable and unsafe. In that moment, Jake realized the importance of acknowledging their pain. "I understand that there have been mistakes in the past," he said earnestly. "I'm committed to learning from those mistakes and ensuring that we create a safer environment for everyone in Riverside." Throughout the evening, Jake engaged in heartfelt discussions, answering questions and addressing concerns. He felt the tension in the room begin to ease as he opened up about his own journey, his own biases, and the work he was doing to change. As the forum concluded, a young woman stood up. "Thank you for being here and for listening to us," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "It means a lot to know that you're trying to do better." Jake smiled, feeling a sense of connection. "Thank you for sharing your story. It's important for me to hear these experiences so I can better serve this community." After the forum, several residents approached him, eager to engage in further discussions. They shared their thoughts on ways to improve community-police relations, and Jake felt invigorated by their passion and willingness to work together. In the days that followed, Jake continued to build on the momentum generated by the forum. He organized follow-up meetings where residents could share their concerns and collaborate on initiatives that would address public safety in a constructive manner. One evening, while attending a meeting at the community center, Jake spotted Malik in the audience. The young man's confidence had grown, and he was beginning to take on a leadership role among his peers. "Officer Harmon," Malik called out during the meeting, his tone direct yet respectful. "I think it's great that you're trying to connect with us, but we need more action. We need you to be there for us when things get tough." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. "I completely understand, Malik. It's not just about talking. It's about taking meaningful action. Let's work together to come up with a plan that addresses your concerns." As the meeting progressed, the residents began to brainstorm ideas for community programs that would foster positive interactions between the police and youth. They discussed mentorship initiatives, after-school programs, and youth-led safety campaigns that would empower young people to take an active role in their community. By the end of the meeting, Jake felt a sense of accomplishment. The community was coming together, not just to voice their concerns, but to actively participate in shaping their environment. However, just as he began to feel a sense of pride, he received a call about a significant incident in the neighborhood. A shooting had occurred, and tensions were running high as rumors began to spread. Jake raced to the scene, where chaos unfolded. The police were already on site, trying to manage the situation as residents gathered, their faces filled with fear and anger. He could feel the atmosphere thick with anxiety, and he knew that his presence would be crucial in de-escalating the situation. "Everyone, please stay back," he shouted, trying to assert some control over the crowd. "We're working to address the situation." As he moved closer, he spotted a familiar face, Malik, standing among a group of concerned neighbors. Jake approached him, his heart heavy with concern. "Malik, we need to get everyone to safety. Can you help me talk to them?" Malik nodded, stepping forward. "Hey, everyone. Let's give the police some space. They're trying to help." The crowd murmured but began to back away, following Malik's lead. Jake felt a surge of gratitude for the young man's support. Together, they worked to calm the situation, reassuring residents that they were there to protect and serve. After the immediate crisis had passed, Jake knew he had to address the community head-on. He gathered everyone at the community center later that evening for a town hall meeting to discuss the incident and how they could move forward together. As residents filtered in, Jake prepared himself for the difficult conversations that lay ahead. He wanted to provide a space where people could voice their fears and frustrations, and he was ready to listen. When he took the stage, he could feel the weight of their gazes upon him. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice steady. "I know that today's events have left many of you feeling anxious and afraid. I'm here to listen and to talk about how we can address these concerns together. The room was charged with emotion as residents shared their thoughts. Some expressed anger at the violence, while others voiced their fears about safety in their neighborhood. "Why can't we feel safe in our own community?" an elderly man asked, his voice trembling. "This has to stop." "I want to do everything I can to ensure that you feel safe," Jake replied earnestly. "But I need your help. We can't do this alone. We need to work together to create a better environment for all of us." As the discussions continued, Jake encouraged residents to share their ideas for addressing the root causes of violence in their community. They discussed youth programs, job training initiatives, and collaborative events that would foster positive relationships among residents and police. By the end of the night, a renewed sense of hope filled the room. The community was ready to take action, and Jake felt invigorated by their commitment to work together. He knew that while the road ahead would still be challenging, they had the power to create change. As he left the meeting, Jake felt a deep sense of gratitude. The community had embraced him, and he was finally beginning to see the fruits of his labor. He was no longer just a badge. He was a part of something greater, a force for good in a world that desperately needed it. In the weeks that followed, Jake continued to engage with the community, building on the momentum from the town hall meeting. The residents worked tirelessly to implement the programs they had discussed, and he was there every step of the way, ready to support and uplift their efforts. One afternoon, as he participated in a community basketball clinic for youth, he spotted Malik shooting hoops with a group of younger kids. The sight filled him with pride. This was the future, a generation of young people empowered to make a difference. As Jake joined in the game, he realized that the journey to redemption was an ongoing process, one that required vigilance, empathy, and a commitment to serve. He had faced the shadows of his past, learned from his mistakes, and had begun to build a legacy of trust and understanding. As the sun set over Riverside, casting a warm glow over the community, Jake felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer defined by his past. He was a man transformed, ready to continue fighting for the community he had come to love. In that moment, he knew that together, they could create a brighter future for Riverside, a future built on trust, respect, and unwavering support for one another. With every step he took, Jake Harmon was determined to make that future a reality, one day at a time.